I'm extremely excited to welcome back my next guest, former NYPD Officer Sal Greco. Sal, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
It's an honor to be here, Jason. I got to admit, the last time me and you did an interview, we actually did a walk and talk kind of, and it's actually a good concept. I like this. We did a walk and talk around Fort Lauderdale, and literally after that happened, all mayhem has broken loose in New York City and the New York City Police Department in regards to the somewhat of a scandal that I was speaking about on your show. And now it's nonstop news, Jason. I got to tell you, the phone doesn't stop ringing. Emails, there's all kinds of notifications on this stuff. And I mean, it's like, Jason, I don't know what to say. It's even worse than me and you were discussing. We were discussing about things, and it's like, oh my God. And it stems from this interview right here. Me and you did. We were walking and talking in Fort Lauderdale, and next thing you know, all hell broke loose after this.
Yeah, it's really amazing, Sal. I mean, it almost seems to me as if part of the strategy of this corrupt NYPD under Eric Adams is to just get involved in so much crime that it's impossible to track what they're doing. But the thing that's happened now, it's strange because, I'm not in New York as I normally am. And I just feel like outside of New York, or if people aren't watching the Sal Greco show and tuning in, to all the different places where you broadcast, which I definitely want to remind people how they can get to all of those. But if people aren't tuning into that stuff, it's almost like this is not even being covered. Don't you agree?
Yeah, Jason, it's funny you mentioned this. I hate to say this, but I'm going to say this one time, especially to the mainstream media here. They were out basically bootlicking for people like John Schell and Kaz Daughtry. I hate to say this, even Vicky Palladino, who's a sitting councilwoman right now, okay, they were sitting there saying crazy things like calling, my friends John McCarr and Eric Dim racist for posting memes, which is they're not racist. They were actually memes in regards to things that Eric Adams himself says. I mean, the guy sounds crazy at times, but, he calls himself the swagger man and all that. So they made memes, and then he would called racist and attacked on social media. So all I said was, look, you could complain about them and call them, because basically Vicky Palladino was doing the bidding of John Schell and Kaz Daughtry. But as a sitting councilwoman, Vicky Palladino, whether it's her or her staff, they see lawsuits. There's a few lawsuits that mentioned, and one in particular, which was Dana Ratchlin at the time, who mentioned that Jeffrey Maddrey and John Schell and Kaz Daughtry and many other executives were involved in smearing her, and she is a victim of sexual misconduct. And the police department absolutely ruined her life and smeared her. Now, Vicky Palladino should have known this. I don't want to hear this. She doesn't know. You're a sitting councilwoman or councilman. You have access to lawsuits in regards to anyone who sues in New York City for anything. So how did you miss that? Don't you want to know these people that you go out and bootlick for aren't involved in criminality themselves? And it's funny because Vicky Palladino, Jason, who else does she love to repost? The good old bootlicker news, another one. Oren Levy, our favorite bootlicker.
Wow. Now, wait a minute. Let me slow you down a second, Sal, because you know so much about all these people. I want to make sure that people know where they can find you, because we're going through so much stuff. And a lot of people who are watching maybe aren't familiar with all of these names. So I think people who watch Crowdsource the Truth are going to start to be. And people can follow you on X at the Sal Greco. And they can also get you on YouTube at the Sal Greco Show. You're all over all of these social media channels. And you have had so much excellent information on this and other topics having to do with corruption in the NYPD. You also mentioned the Finest Unfiltered podcast, which features John McCarry and Eric Dim. Between the three of you guys, this is where I'm getting basically all of my information, and you guys have been so out front on this. But you just mentioned a bunch of names, even some people that I'm not exactly familiar with. So maybe for today, what we should do is start almost like the introduction to people who don't know what is going on. And tell us who some of these people are, what it is they're alleged to have done, and then we're going to get into what is unfolding now, which has got to be one of the most really reprehensible scandals. This sex for overtime scandal, where it is alleged that actually people, police officers were being paid for sex. That's prostitution, isn't it, Sal?
That's right, Jason. But this really stems from what we spoke about prior. Did I not tell you that there were allegations of human trafficking stemming from their favorite now shuttered nightclub in the Bronx, Sofrito, where it's an eclectic group of people that get together, including current councilmen, councilwomen, state assemblymen, state senators, the lieutenant governor, and virtually all these people we're discussing today, the Eric Adams administration and the upper echelon, the New York City Police Department, all hanging out with a self-admitted mob associate, self-admitted criminal and mob associate, Jimmy Rodriguez, the infamous Jimmy Rodriguez, who owned Jimmy's Bronx Cafe and was the quote-unquote manager of Con Sofrito. There it is right on the screen. Do you see that, folks? This place is the center of the Michigas here. You know why? Every crime syndicate needs a place other than one police plaza to plot, scheme, whatever you want to call it. I mean, go back in history. Mob families have done this all the time. You always hear about this stuff. Here it is. This was the hub, Jason. And Jeffrey Maddrey was a well-known frequenter of this place. I have a picture of him there. So,
now, who is Jeffrey Maddrey? Because a lot of people might not know Michigas. That's Sicilian for craziness. But who is Jeffrey Maddrey?
So Jeffrey Maddrey was the chief of department in NYPD since late December 2022. And prior to that, he was the chief of patrol in the New York City Police Department. But he's a very good friend of, and in this picture right here, from on the left there on the screen is Jimmy Rodriguez. Next to him is Eddie Caban. Now, Eddie Caban was the former first deputy commissioner and then police commissioner, had to resign in disgrace. And I believe to the right of the screen would be the twin brother. That's James Caban, who's a criminal. He was arrested while he was a police officer. He was a sergeant.
Wow.
They fired him. He ended up becoming what they deemed at the time in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. He was the slumlord of the Bronx. He actually failed to answer any of these subpoenas. So I believe in the 2010-ish era, he was once again put in jail for not answering subpoenas or summonses or anything in regards to his activity as a slumlord. So he's also been in prison. So he shouldn't even be around police officers, let alone being a part of a nightclub with the other brother, Richard Caban, who on paper was the owner of Con Sofrito and really should be facing sanctions and all kinds of fines himself if he isn't right now in regards to the activity at Con Sofrito. But that's, again, it's just a microcosm of what's going on in the police department. And if we want to get into it, obviously, Eric Adams is the mayor. He's the mayor and a former cop for 22 years. As we discussed, he was a house mouse. He worked. He's basically as an agitator, a race baiter. This is what he did. He was never in the street. I could tell you, he only has about 5 or 10 arrests career-wise, and he was never in the street. That's the best way to describe him. Underneath him, we also have other characters, former cops as well.
So just to cover one other important name, you mentioned Jeffrey Maddrey. He is the one who is accused of having paid overtime or authorized overtime to officers in exchange for sex. Isn't that right?
Correct. He is.
That's a photo that a police officer posted right there from her own Facebook page, that she was wearing this outfit at some police event.
Yes, she is. So that is Lieutenant Katisha Epps. She was basically the, I guess, top administrator as far as the chief of department's office, which is Jeffrey Maddrey's office. And she's tasked with whatever Jeffrey Maddrey wants or does or whatever he orders, he's going to tell her. So if they're going to transfer people, he's going to tell her, I want X or B to be transferred. Whatever's going on in the office, Jeffrey Maddrey is in charge. So he would notify her. And there's text messages and pictures to all of this, Jason. It's not like she's making these allegations with no proof. He's running around. I don't know if you saw that doozy of a press conference with that sleazy lawyer of his, but they admitted basically that he's calling it, I guess, an office fling or consensual sex. Jason, you can't have sexual activity while you're working on duty. That's against the city charter and New York City Police Department rules. That's why the police department right now, Jason, they're very silent on this. They're transferring people around. but they have nothing to say. And neither does the swagger man with no plan himself, Eric Adams, the first indicted mayor in the history of New York City. He has nothing to say because, as you know, Jason, they're all buddies. They hang out at One Police Plaza. They were definitely hanging out at Con Sofrito together. How does Eric Adams not know what's going on here? It's really hard to believe, especially when Ingrid Lewis Martin, who had been indicted the day we actually did that interview together last time on the streets of Fort Lauderdale, she's very close friends with Jeffrey Maddrey. So it's like one big ring of cronyism and nepotism. That's what New York City is suffering under Eric Adams, who puts all his cronies in, former cops that were almost the same as him, that have all questionable behavior and ethics underneath their career. And now, I believe tomorrow at 4 p.m., the king of ethics problems, Corey Pegues, a former inspector that was a part of the Supreme Team, which Eric Adams spoke glowingly of, which I believe we discussed on the prior episode. He's going to have Eric Adams at 4 p.m. on his show on an Instagram Live. I think this is going to be must-see TV just for the purpose of, here's two guys that, like, worship the Supreme Team, including Tim Pearson. I wonder if Tim Pearson is going to come on. What are they going to talk about, Jason? Because Corey Pegues was the one guy that wasn't working in administration when we all thought he would, because he's part of this crew, the Eric Adams crew, which is on top of, in the mix with the Con Sofrito crew. So it's, I mean, Jason, your head spins just hearing this stuff. But now, really,
Sal, I wanted to get your take. Exactly. And listen, believe me, I've been there. We got to talk more about this crazy press conference. We got to talk about the human trafficking. But, there's been a major change in the NYPD recently. The commissioner now is this really young woman, Jessica Tisch, who never was a police officer before. She's making all these changes. What do we think about her? Is she a good police commissioner? Is she doing the right thing? What's the story there?
I think, Jason, she means well. She comes from a billionaire family. Her family, obviously, the Tisch family owns a part of Walmart and also, Lowe's. Sorry, not Walmart, Lowe's. And they own the Giants. I don't know if you know that. Half the team is owned by the Tisch family. So she was the former commissioner of the sanitation department, which was not being run well. And also, she worked in the police department prior. She was a deputy commissioner of technology. And that was also a lot of questions with that, when she was in charge of that. So
facial recognition, right? Clearview.
And they had a problem with that also years ago when
that's
she was
Oren
in charge.
Levy's stuff right there.
Yeah, well, Oren Levy has his hands deep in the Eric Adams administration because he's constantly posting about it. But see, she was in charge of that at the time. So the jury is still out because it looks like she wants change. She recognizes the stench of this. This is not how you run a functioning police department, because she does have a soft spot for the police. She's always been a pro police, we'll say pro cop is in her DNA. The problem here is, and I said this on my own show, it'll be out tomorrow, Jason. If Jeffrey Maddrey or John Schell, Kaz Dawdry, or Tariq Shepard are not suspended right now, today, they should have been suspended, then it's very clear that Eric Adams is still calling the shots, because we've always assumed that, because in the end, Eric Adams acts more like a de facto police commissioner than he even does mayor. I mean, he's always got the police around him. He's always involved, Jason, in all these police matters when he's the mayor. As you know, as the mayor, you're supposed to delegate, your agencies. You put a head to the agencies, and you really don't get involved unless they call you. You make an executive decision almost, but the police department is run by the police commissioner. The fire department is run by the fire commissioner. The sanitation, and so on and so forth. But Eric loves to interject himself in the police department because he really wanted to be the head of the police. So this problem here with Tisch, obviously Jeffrey Maddrey put in for his paperwork to resign or retire, and you have 30 days for the police department to act. So Jeffrey Maddrey, who's been named in a lawsuit, which he already admitted they had a consensual relationship, he's guilty right now of committing, basically, if not a crime, he violated the rules. So why is he not suspended? You can suspend him. You have to suspend him actually by the book. And he's not been suspended yet. And the same goes for the other people named in the suit. The first deputy commissioner, Tanya Kinsella, who's in charge of the overtime, Jason. When you go to the police department, she's in charge of making these codes, which we actually released the video, and she perjured herself in front of city council stating how they have bi-weekly meetings and all this garbage that clearly never happened. It's not happening, or it's not happening where it's their people they're covering for, their subordinates. Also, John Schell, who's the current chief of department, was the chief of patrol. He's involved in this. So is Kaz Dardry, the deputy commissioner of operations. As we came to learn, I've explained this, that this unit they have, which was the CRT unit, that's the unit you saw Oren Levy always tag along with somehow. I don't know how a civilian could tag along with cops, but he's always popping up whenever things were going on with CRT. So this unit was created as a proxy to give John Schell his position as the chief of patrol, because John Schell killed somebody many years ago on the job and was scrutinized, and somehow he didn't get fired for that. So they gave him this role, and we came to find out it is Kaz Dardry that whispered all of this into Eric Adams' ear, and he got the go-ahead. So now you even know why and how the CRT team came together. It was built as a proxy, and that's how they even got grants for things and financials, and why you saw them all over the media. I mean, Newsmax was bootlicking every week for this guy. Yet these two guys, Kaz Dardry and John Schell, are involved in all kinds of this sexual misconduct cases, smearing victims. And now you're going to hear that Kaz Dardry himself was involved. So this is the New York City Police Department, where cronyism gets you very far, even in you committing criminal acts, and they'll cover for you. But if you're a hardworking guy, such as myself, they'll fry you. They'll fry you just because you're too good to be amongst this elite group of criminals, I call it.
It's amazing. Now, I've seen, so we've got some pictures here of this community response team. So John Schell, he's the head of that. Now, is this the same thing? I've seen these guys in these like navy blue kind of bright jackets, but it doesn't seem to be quite the same. Is that the same unit?
Yes, they wear these khaki pants and this bright the blue shirt. It'll say community response team, and they operate in different boroughs, but they ultimately have to answer to Kaz Dardry and John Schell. Also, Kaz Dardry, who should have been terminated back in 2021, if you use, actually 2022, if you use the terminology, use the terminate me, he gave them misleading statements. And he clearly perjured himself on the stand. He can't even give testimony anymore in any cases, which is why I don't know why he's still in the street, even as I guess he's a civilian, a commissioner, but he should have been terminated a long time ago. They saved him and actually promoted him 3 bumps from, I think he made grade as a detective. Then he was called an assistant commissioner. And I was the one that came to find out that I made a complaint to the Department of Investigation and stated, what is his legal authority, and why is he as an assistant commissioner running around with a gun on his waist? Because he's a civilian. He can't be doing that. So they gave him a rank of deputy commissioner. So he kind of tries to sidestep all the scrutiny, which still exists because we never really found out what his legal authority is. Oh, the police commissioner says. That doesn't work. It was never written in the city charter, this deputy commissioner operations. So there's so many questions here, Jason, yet they never want to give you an answer. They're very smug. When they want something, apparently they run it through, well, they were running it through the bootlicker, Oren Levy, to post all these positive things about the police department, but we don't have any answers, Jason. These guys are highly corrupt, and now you're finding out that they're criminal, just like I was trying to state for a couple of years. But the media, Jason, they see me, I guess, they kind of, like I said, both of us, they look at us as fringe people. We're fringe because they don't want to hear the truth.
That's exactly it. You just hit it right there, Sal, is that we're not under their control. And there are a lot of questions, but you know what? I think you and I might be able to get to some answers because you're already answering some questions that I had. I've seen this community response team around, but I didn't really know anything about it. Now, I want to ask you something that I think might shed some light on exactly what we're talking about. Now, this is a video that I did back in August of 2023. asking, did the NYPD host another Staten Island Social Engineering Society Antifa event? And what I'm noticing here, I don't know if you can see, I got a little blow up of our friend Oren Levy with his cigarette, and he's walking around like a schmuck in the middle of this event. And the thing that I noticed from looking at this, and I just know this from living in New York City my whole entire life, correct me if I'm wrong because you're the one with the police experience, but I understand that there is something called the NYPD undercover color of the day. Is that right?
Correct.
So every day they're going to assign a specific color that undercover officers will integrate into their clothing so that if uniformed officers see them, they can identify that this is an undercover officer operating and not shoot them or arrest them, hopefully, or something like that. And so this is somebody else's video that I just saw on Instagram or something like that with Oren Levy walking around. And he had this very unusual navy blue kind of leg patch. I don't know if you can see it. I've highlighted it there in the circle, but he's wearing this navy blue leg patch. I see this guy wearing the bright navy blue Mets kind of jersey. There was another guy in the crowd wearing navy blue jersey. Here's a guy wearing navy blue shorts. Are these guys wearing a community response team undercover color of the day?
Well, what they do is job-wide, Jason. They'll announce the color of the day comes out, I believe, almost an hour or two before midnight, so that the next shift they'll know that that's the color of the day coming. The next day, the following day. So if it is blue, you have to somehow you have to have some kind of blue clothing on you, which is, I don't know, a wristband, an elbow band, a knee brace, something that shows blue, meaning that is one of us. Now, can anybody then see that and try to identify themselves as an officer? Yeah. And knowing how Oren Levy, a guy with arrest under his record, and he's a wannabe cop out there, but he's not. But he's so chummy with Kaz Daughtry and John Schell and Jeffrey Maddrey that he just put on the color of the day and wants to act like he's one of a cop. Because we went back through the history of this guy. He was an Antifa guy. Then he became a freedom fighter. Then he's a Black Lives Matter guy. Then he's an Eric Adams guy. But one thing he was the whole time was an anti-Trump guy. Now he's a totally Trump. He's for Trump. And he was for the pro-NYPD, where he was antagonizing them everywhere he went. And his career arc is very suspicious, and the activities this guy did is very suspicious. And there he is. You can see him right there to the right. And he just shows up at the most convenient time for things. And then there are allegations of him. I guess you want to call him the migrant shelter czar. There are allegations from people on the street that are right next to him that said, and they didn't just tell me this. He would follow Hispanics around with his camera and try to pin them down as Trendiaragua when they're just regular people. But this guy I don't know if he does this for money, for clicks, for the NYPD. Nobody really knows, other than he is the true fringe guy. But somehow Vicky Palladino, John Schell, Kaz Daughtry, this guy made it into the New York Young Republican Gala. Somehow this fringe guy they're trying to make him legitimate. But yet, I don't know how much truth there is to anything he posts, because as you're hearing now, I'm sure you've heard this rumor of him following what majority Hispanic people trying to say that they're Trendiaragua. You saw a video too. You once told me that you thought he staged the whole thing. So it's like, what's up with this guy? And why the police department? Why they're so chummy with him?
Exactly. And then the other thing is, there was this when I first found out about this guy, he just approached me on the street, and he had to be using something like that Clearview facial recognition software and getting some kind of notification from police street cameras or something, because he ran up from behind me, didn't know my name. He said he loved my YouTube show, but how the hell could he recognize me from half a block away and behind me? I don't think my own mother could recognize me. But there's all these articles about him in the New York Post. Here's this massive marijuana shipment. Look at this. This is like, first of all, I have so many questions. If this guy's in the marijuana business in 2019 and they've legalized marijuana, don't you think he should be busy selling weed rather than running around with the cops? What's he doing?
There's so many questions with this guy. And I want to reiterate to the audience here, he has a pending lawsuit in regards to this arrest, him and his brother. There's a second lawsuit that he has that apparently he was stopped by an inspector, but yet this inspector who he used to complain about, I don't know if he talks to this guy or not, but that lawsuit, which is about 14 pages of they're not even facts, they're just claims, and like one paragraph of some kind of fact. And this is in the facts of a lawsuit. Somehow, the city has never made a motion to dismiss or answer any of this stuff. And it's been like a year now, over a year, more than that. I think it's 18 months or 19 months since he filed this, which is very bizarre that the city corporation counsel would not try to get this dismissed. They try to dismiss every case, including my own. They haven't touched Oren Levy's case.
That's unbelievable. See, this is really interesting. This is the kind of stuff I really want to dig into with you, Sal, as we move forward doing shows, because there's all these details that I didn't know. And, you know, I was watching back our interview from Fort Lauderdale the other day. You were talking about all the Fugazi subpoenas that they gave you. And I was thinking more about it. I don't know that we're going to get to that today, but there's a lot for us to discuss. It's still a mystery why they came after you. I mean, we've presumed it was because you're an honest cop and there's no room for that in the NYPD under Eric Adams, but I think there's more to it. Your personal relationship with Roger Stone obviously played a role there, but, you know, Roger Stone was among a very small and select group of individuals who were targeted not just by NYPD, but really by the Robert Mueller investigation, Andrew Weissman, Norm Eisen, the Lawfare Institute. I think there's going to be a lot of details we're going to be able to get to in that in the future. But I didn't know about this Oren Levy lawsuit, and I agree with you completely. I've also sued the city of New York, and I think it comes back to Eric Adams, because that was an incident where I went to Twitter's New York office on 17th Street in November 1st, 2022, to tell Elon Musk that the FBI had infiltrated Twitter, and I got choked before I could do that, struck by a badge, a person who would not identify themselves, tell me if they were or were not NYPD, but the city moved right away to dismiss it, and the judge in the case is Jessica G.L. Clark. She worked for Letitia James until 2023. Mine was one of the first cases she ever did.
Yeah, your case, see, this is what I'm trying to point to people. Well, I want their attention focused on something. Here you have a legit lawsuit because obviously the parties involved, there could be off-duty cop. We don't know because they won't answer anything, but they made a motion to dismiss immediately with you. Yet in a complete, read Oren Levy's lawsuit. It is as frivolous as it gets, sitting there with like 12 or 13 pages of allegations, and there's no motion to dismiss from the city. And he's running around with the police. What is that all about? Then he's online, Jason. If he's not attacking you, he attacks me. I gave this guy a 1-minute interview once. He walked in. He was begging me and for me and Roger to go on camera. And then now he wanted to spin that into Sal Greco didn't get fired for being a Trump supporter. He posted this stuff, and there were people literally telling him, you know, it's exactly what Sal Greco says. I don't have anything to hide, unlike Oren Levy, who I believe still lives with his mom somewhere in Brooklyn. So, I mean, this guy is, and he's 50 years old, never married. I got a lot more questions. There are a lot more questions than answers when it comes to this guy. But if he wants to come with all this, all the smoke behind him, there's fire behind it. I mean, here's an article right here about him that they wrote about.
You said he looks like a Muppet. That's a very accurate description.
He
does look like a Muppet.
He looks like a villainous Muppet from the Muppets. Think, and that would be him. And you know, the way he talks, yeah, bro, and he has a severe, yeah, bro. Kaz Dodry's great, bro. And meanwhile, I could tell you from there's like numerous cops that are contacted either myself or John McCarrick or Eric Dim. None of what he says is true. He just talks to the, John Shell group. But now we know that those are the guys that are in trouble. So he's associated himself with all the bad actors in the New York City Police Department. And there's this guy right here, I mean, it was like a bootlicking fest with him. So whenever they go online and we are writing down, it's all truth, Jason. We don't write something. We might write a meme, but we're getting information from various sources, numerous sources, and facts about things that has been going on either in the police department or their current actions that they're taking. And then immediately Oren Levy's out there bootlicking, countering with the opposite, and then running around when they make arrests. I tell you this one, and this is very alarming. There was an incident where they went to one of these weed shops, and obviously Eric Adams shows up. So now, usually in this instance, Jason, we don't have, when I was in the police department, something like that is more like a crime scene because they need to voucher things. There's money. So you wouldn't have the mayor. If he comes, it'd be like a quick photo op, and then they do a press conference outside. They don't want people walking around in a crime scene. But yet here's Anthony Miranda, another Sofrito alumni, and he's standing there with Eric Adams, and then who's there with Kaz Daughtry getting interviews and walking around where there's all kinds of marijuana and money out on the tables, and there's cops trying to voucher it with. They shouldn't even be doing that because they're supposed to move this stuff into a bag, voucher it, and then bring it to the precinct, to the command, and voucher it correctly because it's way too much stuff. But Oren Levy, he's standing there giving interviews. And I said, how is this guy given unfettered access? There's the video. How does this guy get unfettered access to the scene and to the officers, and other media are not allowed in there? How is that? Someone explain that to me, Jason.
It's an excellent question. Let's watch this for a second, Sal, because I haven't seen this before. Let me just get the audio queued up here.
Standing here today with our New York City Sheriff, our partner, our friend, Sheriff Anthony Miranda. Sheriff, where are we at? What brought us here today to the Bronx? Where exactly are we?
Well, we're in the confines of the 400 precinct in the Bronx. This is a location that was given to us, information received from the community. We're acting on doing inspections based on community complaints, and we ended up coming into this location. We actually got a search warrant for this location, and this is one location that takes up almost half a city block, a little bit more of a city block, of the extent of space that it has. And as you can see,
look at how produced this is.
Significant seizure. Don't have an impact. It's not only a distribution, it's a distribution place, and it had people coming in and using the product on site. What you find back here is packaging, so all the kids' product, children's product. Nothing in this industry was designed for us to sell more products to underage children, and this is what they're doing at this location. This is also untested product. That means that they can be mixing it with other things. So this is the health hazard. So even the people that want to participate legally, you're putting them in danger as well by using the product that they're selling here. This whole thing is filled with cannabis from front to back. So what you see, these empty shelves right now, they all had product on them before we seized it.
He calls it chronic.
This is a very sophisticated operation, I would say.
Yes, the labels are still up.
Sal, this is unbelievable. See, when I see a video like this, the first thing my mind goes to is look at how produced this is. This is not just somebody walking in there with an iPhone. You see that shallow depth of field? This is somebody who knows how to do video production. They're intercutting these dramatic shots of weapons, and we can tell that Kaz Daughtry, he looks nervous. He's kind of like performing, right? He's not a good actor, but this is a prepared, staged video. And isn't it also true that the sheriff guy, he got jammed up? They were just keeping the weed and the money, weren't they?
Yep, that's one of the allegations with him. And also on the ledger, which is his own book in his own office, there were pages ripped out. I mean, I reported on that exclusively, and then you heard that they went over there to his office. They found $100,000 plus in one safe, another $100,000 in another safe. That money should have been vouchered. Of course, the sheriff shouldn't be touching any money. It should be the police department. Why he's even involved, we don't know. But it's funny here, Jason, that video shows police officers moving what they show you in the front. But all the good stuff, the stuff that's worth a lot of money, is in the back. So where did that go? Because they said they found stuff that's I guess it's in the auto pound, which has, I don't know what they're doing, taking this stuff, why it's even there or sitting there. So some stuff is in a warehouse. Some stuff was in an auto pound. Here is Miranda, under investigation because we don't know what he did with the stuff. Where's the money? Kaz Daughtry sitting there smiling. But again, why is Oren Levy allowed to even be there on the scene? He's the only guy in the media allowed to be there. Everyone else isn't. And other reporters should be asking, why was this going on for this long? What's his involvement with the police department? He was there at one of these raids or something. I remember he had a video up, and Eric Adams was there. And somehow he's the only guy allowed to walk around and do all this stuff because his video was out and everybody else was asking, well, why is Oren Levy allowed to be there? There was another incident, Jason. So there was a body camera issue with, I guess they sued another lawsuit. Kaz Dodry's involved in. As a detective, he chased someone, and I believe he put his knee on this person's back. So they announced that we're going to release the body cam video, but they never did release that body cam video because somehow Oren Levy had access to a 10-second clip of him, Kaz Dodry, running towards the suspect. So how does he have access to body camera video where everyone else has to wait until the police department gives it to them? Again, this guy comes into question, Jason. It's just everyone should be asking questions. I know some people follow this guy because, he's shown some good footage of the migrant shelter stuff. And maybe as a broken clock is right twice a day, he might show you a glimpse of something. But overall, there's more smoke here than anything else with this guy involving how does he have access to all this stuff, unlike other journalists. And it's almost as if he's working with them. That's what
he is.
That's
working with them. That's what I think. See, I want people who are watching to understand, Sal, this is not us bitching about some personal beef with some asshole running around on the street. This is important. We need to understand what this guy is doing. So let me go back to the sheriff thing for a second, because also I don't think I even understand this fully. Sheriffs, it's different in every state and every municipality. I know in Las Vegas, the sheriff is essentially, I guess, like the police commissioner in New York. He's in charge of everything. But in New York, it's my understanding that the sheriffs were really only like doing court enforcement stuff or something. What is the role of the sheriff's office in New York City?
In New York City, the sheriff is he's appointed by the mayor, which is one of the top problems there. And then it's basically a revenue base. That's how they get revenue for the cities, through the sheriff. They come, they padlock your place. They do stuff like that. The sheriff is not what you think a sheriff would be in other jurisdictions, because he really has a minimal role. I mean, they shouldn't be pulling people over. I mean, there's been whispers about that stuff, but the sheriff department itself has all sorts of issues with Anthony Miranda, who we learned that his son was driving his personal unmarked car, which the city gives to the sheriff, which is in violation of another. You can't do that. That's like saying, I'm a cop, so I'm going to have my next of kin drive in the vehicle, and then what? What if he crashes? What is he doing with a police car that belongs to the city of New York that taxpayers are paying for? That's an official vehicle. So this guy is mired in controversy. And by the way, very good friends with none other than Jimmy Rodriguez, who so happens to be just like a branch, like a tree branch. He's always got friends everywhere. And he was at Con Sofrito right after the Puerto Rican Day Parade, where they had this it was an unlicensed party. They were serving liquor out there. There were police officers there. Apparently they were drinking, and they violated their own court order. And in fact, that's what got them shut down completely. They agreed to shut everything down because the landlord saw the same video and pictures that I saw and said, how is this being allowed? And why is the sheriff smiling, standing there with Jimmy, and the police department's outside doing the same thing? It's unbelievable, Jason. And again, this guy is involved in all kinds of misconduct. Everywhere you look in this administration, you're left scratching your head. And you're saying to yourself, Jason, is this a movie? No, it's not. It's actual reality. And this incident did happen. He was there. He had alcohol in his hand, Miranda. I mean, I don't know if he was working or not. Who knows? But what is he doing there to begin with? The place had a court order. They shouldn't have a party out in their parking lot. But that's New York City under Eric Adams, Jason.
There's so little reporting on this, Sal. There's like News 12, The Bronx, Instagram, TikTok. Nobody is talking about this. It's amazing. Let's stay on the sheriff for a second, because you see, the second time that I encountered Oren Levy, I don't know if you remember this incident, but during the pandemic, there was this thing happening in Staten Island with this restaurant, this bar called Mac's Pub. And that got shut down. We had the guy who was running it was Danny Presti. And that got shut down because allegedly Danny, he was defying the court orders, and he was serving drinks and food when everybody was supposed to be shuttered. But these uniformed individuals standing out in front, blocking the place, not NYPD. these were sheriffs. You can even see this guy's got the sheriff hat. And then there was a whole incident where apparently Danny had driven his car into somebody. And I remember Andrew Cuomo was having a press conference, and this whole thing came up, and he was like, oh, Danny Presti attacked NYPD officers. And I said, wait a minute, no, he didn't. Those were sheriffs. And then we've also got this character here, Johnny Tobacco, who kind of, saved the day or whatever, came and bought the restaurant. He is another one who I see hanging out at all kinds of police events, and somehow, I don't know, what do you know about any of this?
All right, so John Tobacco is a good friend of mine. He hosts the Wise Guys. There's a show on Newsmax at 10 p.m. His father did his whole career in the New York City Police Department, so he's very pro-police. What he did was he bought this place because they were punishing this place for I guess being even open during the pandemic. So Johnny came in to save the day at that time. But the sheriffs made a false arrest on the owner when they chased him down and acted like they were police officers. You can't do that. There needs to be the only way they could do enforcement, and you'll see it when they do the raids, that is police officers there. They can only enforce what a court tells them. So go shut this place down. Here's the court order. But in Miranda's case here, the most important thing to remember is he was closing these places without a court order. He confiscated all their property, all their money, and he handed them a summons. You can't do that. You actually have to return all that stuff because you're not supposed to do that. But Miranda was doing that, and we don't know why or who authorized this. But this sheriff department has always been, led by some shady characters. It's always been like that for years. This is another branch in the mayor's administration that should be investigated immediately. What's been going on for decades there, because they get away with this kind of stuff. They were terrorizing this guy. And this is not what you should be doing. And in fact, that arrest was, I believe he beat that case because it was a false arrest. But they were doing this to numerous people. They just happened to pick on the conservatives at the time because Bill de Blasio was the mayor, and he hates Republicans. He hates anyone that stands for freedom or is critical. He's just another, what we call communist. That's the best way to describe Bill de Blasio. I had to work for the guy. I mean, yeah. and he shakes your hand like a fish. That I could tell you. I had to deal with that. The fish handshake. That always tells you all you need to know about someone. So he took out all his anger on this individual who was just trying to, make a living. The guy couldn't make a living. You completely crushed this guy. So that was the whole point of what happened there. But yeah, once again, you tell me Oren Levy's there, I find that odd. Why this guy would
thing. And here's his lawyer, Lou Giarmello. I was in contact with Lou, and the last time I spoke to him was when I sent him information about this Andrew Cuomo press conference. I was like, hey, this guy just basically won your case for you because he's prejudiced every single jury in New York by lying about your client. But I mean, as soon as I got to this thing, Oren Levy was all over me. I'm very suspicious of this incident. I feel like this was manipulated by outside parties. And now, with everything that we know about the sheriff's department and all these people that were there, I don't know. This is just a very, very weird thing.
This seems more political than anything else. And it was, at this time, it was under Bill de Blasio. So it would tell me that he gave these orders from somewhere, whether it was him or indirectly, middleman, someone else in the administration that says, yeah, go over there and, go seal the deal. Because, I mean, here's Tina Forte. Yeah. They associate her with Trump. So, again, they want to hurt Trump supporters and conservatives. And it's really crazy because New Yorkers should have stopped at that time and said, forget about who's a conservative or Trump supporter. He's a business owner, and we go to this place. We don't care who your politics are. We could be the same. We could end up just like Max's Pub there. We're going to end up just the same way. They're going to come after us. See, nobody decided to say time out. They didn't do that. They let him. They wanted to see him fry because they associated with him being a Trump supporter. That's the division they've caused in this country has had a ripple effect. I don't know if it could ever be repaired. Hopefully you're starting to see that now. But, I mean, that was at the height of the worst that was happening. And they were politically persecuting people left and right. He was just another one of them, just like myself, just like Roger, just like Trump himself. It's a long list. and it's based on politics. There was nothing Danny was doing that the next guy wasn't doing. He was just trying to find a way around their own rules. They didn't like that because they want to be dictators. And that's why with this whole situation, Jason, I want to point out there's a lot of empty voices out there. Where are the people trying to defend? They were all defending Jeffrey Maddrey. Where are these big police aficionados? Do I hear a peep out of Bill Bratton? Where's Bo Dietl? Bo Dietl, another guy's always out there, right? Bo Dietl's always swinging a big stick. This got a big mouth talking. He's not saying a word about all this stuff. You know why? He's having dinner with them. Bill Bratton, the same thing. Has Ray Kelly said anything? I know he said a couple of things but he's got, see, these people want to protect the establishment. Why? Because they want their hooks in, because that's how they get their little media, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You need to come in there. I mean, very recently, I'm not going to name a network or whoever it was, but a network called John McCarty. They wanted him on to talk about this incident where this poor woman was lit up on a train, right? And she perished. And police clearly didn't do their job. I mean, they were just standing around, that's an issue in itself. So they want to speak to him about that. And John stated, well, what about this scandal with Jeffrey Maddrey in the police department? And they didn't want to touch that. And this is a major network. So John refused to go on. So that just shows you that they just see most of these people love the same talking points. They repeat them like parrots, and everybody follows them and they get paid and all this nice stuff. Meanwhile, independent people like yourself and me, or John McCarty and Eric Dim, we like to just tell you the truth. We have nothing really to gain here. We're not making millions of dollars by sitting here. We're doing this out of goodness of our hearts. If we make a living, so be it. Nobody's going to go buy a mansion off this stuff. But those people that you see on TV, I mean, I hate to bring it up, but do you see a guy like Sean Hannity saying this stuff? No. He's all about back the blue, wear the blindfold. Hey, go shake hands with Jeffrey Maddrey. What a great guy. Same guy's destroying cops in the street that do their job. That's what you're going to see. I'm not picking on Sean Hannity. I'm just showing you that these big people don't have time for Sal Greco. They don't have time for John McCarty. They don't have time for Eric Dim. They don't have time for Jason Goodman. We're fringe people. We can't have them on there. Otherwise, we won't have access to the police department and their top people. Meanwhile, Jason, they haven't given a scoop in years. The police department just closes their doors. They don't want you to know anything. They believe in being dictators. All these guys up top are the same. And until we see suspensions and modifications of these people, Eric Adams will always be in charge. Until Eric Adams is gone, you will always see some sort of element of corruption in this police department and elsewhere in the administration. That's just how it is.
You're right. I agree with you completely, Sal, but I would even go further. I think there's even more to it than just them thinking that we're not worth their time or something like that. I think they're realizing that, particularly as more people start watching our shows and supporting people like you and me, and I want to make sure people know, they can go to salgreco.com and you can access all of Sal's podcasts, read his bio, read his blog, and most importantly, you can support his show either by making a financial contribution, either a one-time or a monthly contribution, or you can buy some pretty awesome Sal Greco swag at the shop there. You get the Fugazi t-shirts, the Sal Greco Did Nothing Wrong gear, any of that stuff. I love this term Fugazi. Of course, I've heard it before, but when you said it the other day, it just sort of cracked me up a little bit. And it is. I mean, we're going to get into the details of all this stuff that they tried to subpoena you for and all of that, but there's so much here, Sal, I mean, I don't think it's just a matter of them, and by them I mean the Sean Hannitys and the Jesse Waters and the New York Times and all these big corporate-owned, really financially heavily backed things. There's more to it than them just thinking that we're peons or whatever. There's an agenda. And I think what's happening with Oren Levy in the police is the NYPD's effort to squelch what we're doing. I think they realize that people are starting to turn away from some of these other things. I mean, as I said at the top of the show, I got to you and to John and Eric because I was talking about this type of issue with corruption in the NYPD, and, social media algorithms started bringing me the Sal Greco Show, the Finest Unfiltered podcast, and that's where I was really learning things and starting to put together some of the pieces like we are today, right now, in this conversation.
Yeah. And, Jason, I did see his stuff years ago, but of course I didn't have X. I was going through my whole, witch hunt. And then when I finally got back on, and then I think you finally had posted because you didn't have the video. I think you had to repost it on X. You found
I got kicked off.
Yeah, the initial video of you meeting Oren Levy. And I said that, and then I spoke to John and Eric, and it says, we should have Jason on or something because, we agree on a lot of different things and the things he's doing. But I go, that was rather odd the way he even met the guy, because we kind of met him in the same kind of way, like he came out of nowhere and he comes in and he tries to be all buddy. Next thing you know, he's knifing you in the back. He's done that with virtually everyone he knows, by the way. All these people I talked about, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the Freedom Movement, the NYPD, Eric Adams, it doesn't matter, Trump. Now this guy said, I think he wanted to sit down with Tom Homan. Tom Homan doesn't even know who he is, but this guy is like, what a character. And the only way for people out there, you need to type in Oren Levy's name. Just put Oren Levy in and you'll find a bunch of things about this guy. You can't put in viral news or his tagline, I guess is what he goes on, but his name, Oren Levy, will lead you to all these things, including the lawsuit I found. And I just want people to know, you just need to look at this stuff and analyze yourself. Is this a guy who's trustworthy? Should I believe? Or what's really going on here? Because wherever he confronts people that are not on the same, we'll say, I guess they don't believe the same things he does, he goes after you. And he's vicious. I've seen him, and he goes after another person that, listen, I'm not friends with them or agree with their politics or their views, Talia Jane, but he's said some vicious things that are borderline, I'd say discriminatory, but, all that free speech in America, First Amendment stuff. But then is Oren Levy going to say the same thing if somebody says that about him? Because he's a vicious, vile human being. And I find it odd because that's how I came back across your feed, because you were taking off years ago after everything that happened. And I saw this video and I even told John and Eric about it. And that was even bizarre how Jason ran into this guy.
Yeah.
Because I know where this area is because I used to actually walk down Bleecker Street and stuff. This is crazy. I don't even know how you ran into him.
Well, and look at how empty the streets are, Sal. It's quite sad because, I was looking at this video and then I'm approaching this restaurant right here, Monty's Trattoria. I know the family that owns that, and the owner's daughter recently made a video outside there. This whole entire awning and block is just bombed with graffiti. It looks terrible now. And this was a nice neighborhood. I mean, New York has just been overrun. So you can even see, there he is coming up in the reflection behind me. Yeah. And he says his name is John. This is crazy.
Yes.
Let's just watch this for a second.
What's that? Don't go to Domino's Pizza. Don't go to Olive Garden. Don't go to those big, giant corporate chains. Use your local restaurants and try and help those small businesses stay around. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people who aren't 6 feet apart. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just observing it. This is Monty's Trattoria. When life comes back to normal, if people choose to visit New York City, I highly recommend this restaurant. Absolutely delicious, run by a wonderful family. And the sign says they're closed.
Yeah,
what?
He's right behind you.
What's up with you?
You're a guy on YouTube, right?
Correct, yes.
Hospitals are still not packed?
What's that?
She's asking me about the hospitals.
Hospitals are not packed that I've observed.
Really?
Yeah, I was just over at the Northwell Health over there on, 6th Ave. A lot of ambulances parked there. Have you been kept awake by ambulances at night?
I have. I live on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. Ambulances going back and forth all night long.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have friends that work in the ER room and they're like, listen, it's pretty bad inside. A lot of friends in my...
What do you do?
I own natural medicine shops. I own Green Angel CBD. You probably see me on TV. That was the company that I was locked up for hemp.
I did not know that.
So back in November 2nd...
What's your name?
John.
So there he says his name is John. Why is he lying to me about that? Isn't that interesting? And look
Yeah,
what he's
that's
doing, Sal. He's pushing the story that everything is terrible from COVID. See, he approached me for a very important reason there. This is April 2020. I was walking around. You can see the streets of New York are empty. And I was walking around saying, hey, wait a minute. What's with this pandemic? Nobody's around. The hospitals, the ambulances are all parked. He's saying, no, I'm being kept up by ambulances. The hospitals are full. People are telling me the hospitals are full. He's got this stupid mask on. He looks like he's about to go put up some drywall. Tells me his name is John. This guy was set to get me off the streets. Like you said, you saw my work years ago, but then I disappeared. And it almost completely destroyed me financially. And I mean, this was a big deal. There's a lot of people who, at the time, my YouTube channel got up to 120,000 subscribers. And I'm not trying to, moan and cry about a social media presence, but this is how I earn a living. And when they destroyed that social media platform, I could barely pay my bills for a while. It took a long time to get built back up to even now where I'm nowhere near the level of, financial success that I was having at that time. But it wasn't just about the money. They wanted to stop my message. They want to control the message. And that is what this guy is all about, is controlling the message and getting out the message that the NYPD and the governor and the mayor want to have out.
Yeah, like I said, this guy, I find him rather odd and strange. I would not be involved or disengage from this guy, but I find it, like I said previously on the last time we were walking around Fort Lauderdale, people have this opinion about you, even about me or John and Eric. And you know what it is? It's because you're critical. You ask questions, and people in authority don't want you to ask questions. They want you to be dumb and docile. You're asking way too many questions and being critical and showing things, and that's going to lead to problems. So you're going to run into, I don't know, maybe people that are friendly with them, may work for them, and they're going to try and throw a roadblock in your way. And I see that a lot because I see people say stupid things about you. And look, are we going to totally agree on everything and 100%? Obviously not. But what I agree with is that you are critical of people in power, of the establishment. You ask questions. You have the right to. You're not committing a crime. But these other people just go along with that narrative. And the people that go along with the narrative happen to just, they get all the views. They make all the money. They get everything they want. And they like to squash the little guy. That would be yourself, me, John, and Eric. Why? Because they don't want any opposition. You bring the opposition because you're trying to ask questions. Everyone should always ask questions of people in authority. Heck, I might run for office down here in Miami. If I was the mayor, I would expect people to try to ask me questions and see what I would do as far as running a government. That's just the way the world works. But not with these people that we see that were following you. I mean, that was kind of creepy. He was behind you like that without saying a word. That creeped out. I see his shadow. I see his reflection. I'd say, well, who the hell are you? Where'd you come from?
Yeah, it's really weird, Sal. Well, listen, we're almost at the end of our hour here. I want to make sure that people know that they can find you. They can go to salgreco.com. This is a great way to locate all of Sal's social media. He's got his blog here, episodes from his fantastic podcast, The Sal Greco Show. Anybody who wants to really know what is going on inside the corrupt NYPD, the corrupt Eric Adams administration, Sal is a fantastic resource. And I want to remind people that we do earn our living doing this, so we can't do it without your support. People can visit salgreco.com and click on the support tab. You can support Sal by just sending a financial contribution or by buying some gear from the store. Sal, we got a lot still to talk about with all this stuff that's happening with the sexual misconduct scandals in the NYPD. But as this thing develops, I hope you'll keep coming back on and talking to me some more about it. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up today?
Yeah, so I'll have my own episodes out of my show, The Sal Greco Show. You can catch it on Rumble, YouTube, any major podcast streaming platform. So what we're going to have now is I'm getting more details of what's going on. And you can watch all of that. Tomorrow I'll have a new episode on Monday. I might try to bring some guests on as the week goes because it's just very hard. It's a one-man operation, so it's not like I have like a team. This isn't Fox News, so I'm one person. It's hard to do this alone. Jason can tell you. So I'm going to be giving my analysis. I also might have new things that you don't know about to post on the show. Also, check me out on X at the Sal Greco, the same on Instagram. And if you have Truth Social, which is truly the audience of one, it's at Head of the Table. And with that, I'm honored to come on here, Jason, because I believe in your work ethic and what you're trying to do. You ask questions and you're critical of people in charge. If that's a crime, then I guess we'd all be in prison, because we have that right as paying city taxpayers, and we also state taxpayers. We're federal taxpayers. We have the right to ask what our government is doing, especially those in charge. Remember that, because what you're seeing in New York City, the once shiny city on a hill, is no longer that. And why? Because of the people that were put in charge. Remember that.
Absolutely right. Well said, Sal. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate what you're doing. I want to remind viewers you can also sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Thanks for watching.